Hi, welcome back to my channel. I wanted to do a video on something which is feeling like it needs to be said at this point in my day, life, whatever. These videos are extremely therapeutic for me as well as anyone else that might watch them. So let's just get in with it. I want to talk about how moving to a new astrological era, which we are in, there's a quote in the Bible which states that we are there's this parable. I don't really want to go into like the whole thing, but apparently the first finished last and the last finished first. And I don't really want to get into all the details of that idea, but it's also a case of sometimes you can literally live from like a hopeless mindset and not even be consciously aware of it, or like feel like you just, I don't know, there's just so many negative things that can just be impacting you, and one day you can just like feel like it just doesn't affect you anymore, or like not necessarily doesn't affect you, but like you have choices in life. And I'm gonna revert to obviously things like abuse and stuff. Like, you can really be in a mindset of like, I will always be, you can have so many negative beliefs enforced on you by toxic people that want to keep you in a sort of like serving state. And the thing is, I've definitely blossomed, I feel like, over lockdown or whatever. Not blossomed necessarily as much as further independently individuated and became more autonomous. And I think that's a recovery from breaking away from narcissistic people, because the thing about narcissists is that they don't like other people to have autonomy. They can't really handle that, and they don't really understand it even cognitively. They don't sort of identify it as a thing. And I think autonomy and sort of like individuality and identity and stuff, obviously it's extremely important and core to self-esteem and health in general. Like, obviously, you know, no one should take control away from you, because I always like to actually liken what someone's doing to me to what God does in my mind. We all have, like, obviously, I don't want to talk about everyone's opinion of love, and I started to write that list myself of like, what do I think is love, and probably will be helpful to do, but I was like, I'll probably just bring up too much bullshit at this point. Like, love is whatever, and I can't bother to over confuse myself with too many facets of information, where, to be honest, I need to just work through them in time. But like, things like, what, I can't remember what I wrote down this morning, but things like passive aggression. Like, I was on the phone and this woman was really passive aggressive to me, and I was like, I was just sort of like, because I think sometimes things are so accepted in society and culture, and to be honest, it's going to be accepted by anyone. Like, society and culture is definitely a huge factor, but at the same time, if you're conditioned, regardless of your culture, you could grow up in a fucking cave and it wouldn't matter. If you've been conditioned to accept certain behaviour like passive aggression, you're going to accept it without sort of like questioning its effect on you or sort of stuff like that. And it really comes to like a conscious understanding of even things like, obviously extreme abuse is one thing, but even subtleties of effects of like narcissism and toxicity from other people is like passive aggression. Like, it's not, and it can be so subtle in terms of even like a tone of voice or a shop assistant that kind of pushes your bags at you. And I've had that happen before, and I've noticed it. And you know, I definitely think it's nothing to do with the way you come across. You come across like you come across, be that an open person, be that a positive person, be that a happy person, be that a receptive person even. I don't think you should go around life closing yourself up to people. Maybe, I think there's a level of discernment which brings that, actually, so I'm not going to say that completely, but if you come across naively in a conversation with someone that you've never met and you can't see, like, I don't think that's, you know, I'm not really an advocate of like in I don't know if innocent until proven guilty kind of idea comes up here. I'm not really sure, but you can't tell if someone's going to be passive aggressive to you or any other form of abuse. And I think it's really important not to judge yourself for coming across in a way that may have like triggered them or something, because you're not triggering them. Like, someone abusing you is not being triggered. Maybe they are being triggered, but it's not the same as being triggered from being abused. Do you know what I mean? There's such a difference between someone being triggered because they've had a trauma or an emotional issue with something, or someone being triggered because they have a personality problem. Obviously I'm keeping in mind I do have borderline traits and fear of rejection, but also there's actually a lot of information on how like people that I feel like might fall into my category, that might identify borderline traits in themselves. Often, you know, I'm not saying I'm not diagnosing I don't have borderline personality disorder. I'm not someone that knows everything about it, but I think there's such a sense in borderline personality disorder of fear of rejection. And what are you going to fear? You're going to fear rejection if you've been rejected by a lot of like negative, toxic people that kind of draw you in on purpose, only to negatively hurt you for their own sadistic means. And I'm like, of course I have a fear of rejection if I've sort of like been brought up around toxic people. So it like logically makes sense at the same time, like. And apparently when you heal more from narcissistic abuse and stuff, that you actually, your borderline traits can tend to dissipate. And from generally healing from trauma, I've already sort of experienced that already. So yeah, and like, I don't know, I just think there's always hope in a situation sometimes. And I don't know, it's funny how God's timing works and all that. And I think sometimes, I want to say everything happens for a reason. I don't love that phrase because it's not always, that's more of a universe kind of phrase, and it's not really a godly phrase, so I don't really love that phrase. But even like, I definitely think I was sort of a victim of religious conditioning in my upbringing. And I think this can be very common in different cultures and stuff, and I like to bring up cultures because it does make a difference in terms of reinforcement, of feeling like maybe you need to be obliged in some way to tolerate toxic people and not cut them off. And I'm seeing more and more as I individuate just how able I am to do that. At one point it didn't seem even possible to fathom, and I've done a different video about, or like mentioned somewhere, that it's because when you have a bunch of conditioning in your mind, you're kind of working from that, because our brain's like a programmed computer, and it's normal, and it's sort of like your brain takes the easiest route in all situations that you know to be consciously true, or like past, and you've got like a really strong neuro pathway to being abused by someone. So if you've had an upbringing or a past with it, and when you are trying to distance yourself from that, the easiest path in your mind is just to revert to the most strong neuro pathway, which is that. So kind of, it's just the way we're built, and it's a case of breaking down those beliefs and sort of conditioning over time, and getting the support needed, and you build, I think the compassion for myself for this situation is already within me, because unfortunately in Elevation Church, God doesn't give you a situation when he doesn't, and he doesn't put, and God doesn't give you a situation that he doesn't have, if he hasn't given you it within yourself to handle it in some way. But handling it doesn't mean handling it how you're expected to handle it. Handling it is how you expect yourself to handle it, and what's healthiest for you, and really doing what you think is right for yourself and your circumstance, and not feeling like pressured into doing things that you don't want to do. And that might seem like obvious to like a lot of people, but I think it's very common to potentially feel this way. But even regardless of this stuff, I think it's just nice to know that, you know, your circumstances can always change. You can have a really like helpless mindset in certain situations and really just especially if you hit like low spots of life, and obviously we have been in lockdown and everything, but if you hit like sort of like a bit of a quarter life crisis kind of moment, maybe that was me a bit, and I don't think it was necessarily a quarter life crisis. I wasn't depressed or anything like that, but I think certain stuff really caught up to me in terms of effects of negative relationships and romantic relationships and family relationships, to the point where I really could tell, and just you run from a law of attraction like belief system that you are programmed with, and it's not always your fault that you've been programmed a certain way. And I'm just in a bit of a like, okay, let's let it breathe kind of moment in terms of like, but I feel like I've come so far in terms of actually healing myself and literally attracting the things I want. And I think it is about patience, but at the same time it's also about hope and the ability to know that you can make those decisions, because often it's possible for people to be told that they can't, a lot of the time, and it's so unhealthy. And it's like, why would you put yourself in a deficit position logically for someone that is only looking to abuse? So it's just really important, I feel like, to weigh up those sort of like ideas in life. But like, there's so much positive stuff that doesn't involve negative people. Like, just because your hope for that relationship is gone and you decide to cut them off, please do. But like, it doesn't mean the hope for your life is gone. Your hope has actually gotten a lot more, or just been able to take up more space and it's flourish more, because you're not dragged down by that bullshit anymore, and you're not sort of held back or dragged down or diminished or just hurt by any sort of situation in that aspect. And you know, it says it takes 7 attempts to escape a toxic relationship and a lot of experiences. But have compassion with yourself. Obviously, I understand that some people don't want to do this, and I think if anyone's going through anything similar, so am I. And it's just a case of like, everything happens in the right time, I feel like. But also, but like, you have the choice. We all have will of choice. We all have will of like direction in our own lives, and anyone that tries to tell you that you don't is lying. So we have the choice over and control over ourselves, how we live our lives, what we expose ourselves to, for the main, that we choose to expose ourselves to, and dealing with people and toxic people and people that have issues, and how we actually internalize that, and also defend ourselves, and also what we tolerate from that level. Because once you decide you're not going to tolerate something, you just won't, and they won't, and people won't chuck it at you, or if they do, you'll know how to handle it, and it will be not damaging to you. If anything, they might be damaged, because the karma will just sort of like revert back to them, and they'll be like embarrassed that they even tried to drag you down. So yeah, I'm gonna just probably keep doing a couple more videos along this thing, because I'm very proud of the progress I've made, not gonna lie. So there we go. Thanks for listening, bye.